Recently, I've come to the realization that I'm running out of time. Like, desperately. With what? Dewdrop Dynasty, which is my whimsical neo-retro Metroidvania I've been working on for the past 2 or 3 years. You see, the cold hard reality about game dev is the longer it takes for you to release your game, the harder it is for it to be successful. Of course, there's many examples of games that took 5+ years to make, and they were incredibly successful. But that doesn't count for all the thousands of projects that were never finished or just fell by the wayside. First off, keeping people hyped about a game or project for years is extremely difficult. After a while, people eventually just move on to something else. Or even worse, they'll be disappointed with the game. Because the longer it takes to make, the higher everyone's expectations become. A prime example is Tears of the Kingdom. Why is that game taking forever? Is it going to be amazing? It better be, or I'm going to be upset. And secondly, timing is crucial because of the current gaming trends. You could be working on a farm simulator game, and by the time you release it, find that the market is way too saturated. Like, seriously, who named this game? And finally, and worst of all, you could lose faith, interest, or energy to keep working on your project. And this is especially true for solo indie devs. You have to work on every aspect of your game, which requires you to be constantly thinking about it, dreaming about it, planning, preparing, and that takes up a lot of energy. These are the things I've been thinking about a lot lately with Dewdrop Dynasty. And this led me to the only logical conclusion, that I need to finish Dewdrop Dynasty as fast as possible, or move on to something else. But I wasn't sure where to start. I mean, yes, I've been working on Dewdrop, but slowly. You see, I'm married, I work full-time, and I make videos for this little site called YouTube. So free time tends to be scarce with me. This is when I started to search the World Wide Web for help and found out that Steam was hosting a Next Fest in October. And for those who've never heard of Steam's Next Fest, it's basically a week where Steam promotes games through live streams on the front page, and it's great because people get a chance to check out your game and give it a wish list. You're also required to have a demo. I mean, first and foremost, demos are a great way to gauge the level of interest that people have for your game. I like to look at them as a game jam submission, that you can highlight the tone and feel of your game without fleshing everything out. I instantly knew I had to be a part of this Next Fest, no matter the cost. I mean, it didn't cost anything. It's completely free to join. It was only July at the time, and I felt comfortable that I had more than enough time to get everything done, or so I thought. So off I went, overhauling major mechanics such as the camera and room system for the game. I worked on improving the art style, adding bigger tiles for more variation. I also completely overhauled the UI, adding basic settings, minimap, and a character screen. I added more enemies, a mini-boss, controller support, and as much polish as humanly possible. Meanwhile, I reached out to my composer, Peter E. Jones, to whip up some tracks for the new demo location called Tumbleweed. It's a dusty desert western ghost town full of snakes, dynamite boots, and dust. Anywho, he did an amazing job, and here's a little sneak peek of how it turned out. So progress on the demo was coming along beautifully, but one thing became painfully obvious. I was burning myself out. I was working 12 to 14-hour days for several weeks. I no longer had weekends, they were just me working by myself. And I missed out on a bunch of social events with my friends and family, which was rough. And I just kept wondering, if the demo was this hard to put together, how much more the final game? And that's when I realized that this isn't sustainable. And I'm sure there's many successful game devs that have made it because they just crammed for years. But if sacrificing my life in order to finish a little game is what it takes to be successful, I don't know if that's what I want. Me personally, it's always been a dream to become a full-time game developer. That's something that I used to dream about as a kid. I realized that something needed to change and fast, and I realized that I was the bottleneck. But the problem is, how do I speed it up? The only way I can think of is by hiring more people or contracting, but that requires money. And for those who don't know, that the money I make from this channel goes straight back into the development of Dewdrop Dynasty. And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be able to even get as far as I have. I know there's people out there that will say that they could develop a game for free, and that's totally true, you can. I've done it before. Especially if you have free time, if you're a student, you got summer break, you could develop an amazing game, and especially something that's commercially viable. But unfortunately, I'm not in that situation, and developing games can be expensive. Yeah, who would have thought it? Between commissioning artists or musicians, having an accountant so you don't go to jail if your game's successful, but obviously you don't have to spend that money if you have time. Well, I would recommend the accountant. That's kind of a big thing. And there's that word again, time. the one thing I just don't have enough of. So this is when I made the decision to make a Kickstarter for Dewdrop Dynasty. I figured I would release it at the same time as the Steam Next Fest so people can enjoy the demo and also support the Kickstarter if they liked it. And my whole thought behind the Kickstarter is if we raise the minimum goal, that we'd be able to actually finish this game and make it a game worth being finished. It would cover all the costs and expenses that we have right now with development, and most importantly, I would be able to contract the work out so that the game would just be developed way faster. So coming up on the end of our story here, I was successful in officially releasing Dewdrop Dynasty for the Steam Next Fest. I got to stream in front of hundreds of people, and it was just a great opportunity to connect and learn a lot about the game and where we can improve upon it. I also successfully launched the Kickstarter on the same day thanks to the Fear team and all their help and support. But I was quickly surprised to see that most people didn't want to support the project and they didn't understand the reason behind the Kickstarter. I've had several people reach out and say that I'm just trying to be greedy, asking for money, or I'm selfish, or they could make a game for way less money. And I'm not gonna lie, it can be really disheartening, especially when I've worked so hard on all of this. So here's where I stand today. The only way I'm able to finish Dewdrop Dynasty is with your help and support. If Dewdrop seems like a game that would be interesting to you or something that you would buy when it would come out, I highly encourage you to support the Kickstarter. And if it's something you're not interested in or just not your cup of tea, please don't support the Kickstarter because I want to see how many people are actually interested in this game. It's so odd to think, but the fate of Dewdrop rests in this Kickstarter. If it succeeds, we're going to be able to create an amazing game that we look back on. And if the Kickstarter fails, then Dewdrop will just be put on the shelf and I'll get back to making more YouTube videos and working on smaller projects instead. So really, as dramatic as it sounds, the fate of Dewdrop Dynasty rests on your shoulders. And regardless of the outcome, I want you to know that I appreciate each and every one of you for all of your support over this whole journey, and I'm excited to look back at this video in a year and see what the future had in store for us. If you have any questions or concerns of what the future looks like, please let me know in the comments down below. And also, I want to give a huge shout out to Electron PR, Ganger, Heath Sargent, James Albert, Luke the Duke, Remtain, Rybread, Skides, Yupseed, Zulwarn, and the rest of the fantastic Patreon supporters. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time for another game dev adventure.